Hello and welcome to Teaching My Cat to Read, the very serious book review podcast. I'm Eli.
I'm Em.
And I'm Lottie. And this week we're discussing everything about Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie.
Jingle, pop, splash.
Exactly. I think, hello, welcome to our podcast. We are Book Podcast. We have a book every episode. We have fun, silly questions about said book. It's a fun time. It's a good time. If you enjoy this episode, give it a like or review. There we go.
I love that we're starting with the advertising this time. Completely off topic and nothing to do with our podcast, guys. If you hear a massive thumping and screaming and swearing, it's because my horrible audio tent that I have fashioned from plastic tubs of yarn and my duvet has collapsed on my head and I may be dead. This is your pre-flight warning. It's taking my hairstyle out. I can feel my hair like getting pulled out of the ponytail by the static of the duvet and falling in my face.
It's for the listeners, Em. It's for the listeners.
They can put up with me sounding like I'm at the bottom of a fishbowl. They can deal.
Exactly.
Oh, the dream of the endless in my echoing prison. Why did we rent a house with Victorian ceilings, Eli? Why did we do this to ourselves?
Listen, it was what was there. I'm sorry. The context is I chose this house and there have been times when I have regretted it.
To be fair, I love most things about it. Even the high ceilings when I'm not trying to record a podcast. It's just that I am in a very special brand of hell at this time. Anyway, we should talk about Death on the Nile. Let's talk about Death on the Nile, kids.
Shall I read the blurb? Well, I say the blurb. The blurb from the agathachristie.com website. I feel this is valid.
Fancy professionals.
The tranquility of a cruise along the Nile is shattered by the discovery that Lynette Ridgway has been shot through the head. She was young, stylish and beautiful, a girl who had everything until she lost her life. Hercule Poirot recalls an earlier outburst by a fellow passenger. I'd like to put my dear little pistol against her head and just press the trigger. Yet in this exotic setting, nothing is ever quite what it seems. ...
See, my terrible summary was just people die on a boat.
I mean, that was a blurb.
Yeah.
That is a blurb. My terrible summary. Oh, no. My terrible summary was Poirot goes on holiday, meets an interesting set of characters, shooty, stabby, bit of petty theft, all solved by the time the cruise ends.
Yeah.
I think that's a valid.
Yeah. I had Agatha Christie realise she's put too many people on this fictional boat and has to start killing them off so she doesn't get confused.
Yeah.
Like, it's too many people for her to keep track of.
I got so confused.
We are going to spoil this book if you haven't already worked this one out, guys.
Yeah.
So if you haven't watched the film or haven't read the book and don't want to be spoiled, pause, read the book, come back. Anyway.
Although I will say the recent film, you can watch that and still not be spoiled for the book, because I was surprised by who died in the book. Having seen the film.
Oh, okay. So they changed quite a lot.
They changed things.
They are playing like 3D Jenga with the characters. They are just like, they're like, no, what's the...
They splice them up.
Did you guys have the little... They're not Barbies, they were like spaghetti doll people with the spaghetti hair, and you could like snap their heads off and put them on other bodies and shit.
I mean, you could do that with Barbies too if you weren't a coward.
I mean, I didn't put the Barbies back together when I dismembered them. Eli. That was too much like work. You put them in the frying pan on your toy oven, and that's it. That's the end of the game. Anyway.
Yeah, in the recent movie, they've like cut and chopped up the characters into like they've decomposed certain characters and turned other ones into composite characters, and a different person.
Okay,
a different person is the third victim in the movie, and I was so sad because I thought it was going to be somebody different than it was when I read the book today, as is my want to read the book of the podcast the day that we record the podcast.
You looked very cozy. The cat was like guarding you while you were lying on the sofa with it. It was very cute.
Oh, she was trying to learn.
Murder.
She was trying to learn.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe then paraphrase that with, if you've watched the film, you might be spoiled for the book because it's clearly slightly different. Shall we do... Yeah. I say character introduction. Shall we just go through the passenger list and then I'll read them out? And then if we can try and remember, or give our own, like I say, terrible summary, but like our own little synopsis of who they are. So Hercule Poirot, obvious detective.
My specialist
King
boy.
with T-boy swag.
Yeah,
this is what I decided
Belgian
in this
detective
book.
guy. Colonel Race, sidekick to Poirot. I think that's his.
Also not in the movie at all.
Yeah. Also,
okay.
This is the movie with Gal Gadot, by the way.
Okay, Eli, as we go through this list, can you just call out who isn't in the film? Okay, so we've got Lynette Doyle, née Ridgway. Mm-hmm. So she's like, I guess, a socialite who has just got married to Simon Doyle. So Lynette, she's just come into this money. I think she's just turned 21. Or no, sorry, it's 21. Or if she marries, she inherits all of this money.
Yes. So she was about to turn 21 in June.
Yeah.
And then she got married to this guy. And this is plot relevant for reasons of inheritance and people having motive to want her dead because she ends up dead.
Yeah. So then Simon, and then there's Jacqueline de Belfort. So the connection between Jacqueline, Lynette and Simon is Jacqueline is Lynette's friend and was dating Simon.
Engaged.
Oh, okay, they were engaged. And then Jacqueline goes round to Lynette's house to say, this is my fiancé Simon. And Lynette steals Simon. And then there's Salmon Otterborn and her daughter Rosaline. So
Salome.
Salome is a writer of spicy literature.
Racy novels.
Racy novel writer, and her daughter Rosalie, who's kind of looking after her, I guess, on this cruise.
In the film, she is much more likeable. In this book, she's like really not a likeable character.
Yeah, she's not a likeable character.
She's very much a caricature. You feel like Agatha Christie knew female writers like this and was very specifically being like, here is everything that I hate about you specifically.
And then in the film, she's a blues singer. And she's much more likeable and also doesn't end up dead.
Okay,
Yes.
so she doesn't... Okay, yeah, she dies in the book.
Yeah.
There's Mrs. Allerton and her son, Tim.
And in the movie, the stand-in for Tim Allerton, they change his name and everything, is the one who dies instead of Salome Otterborn.
There's Andrew Pennington. I'm trying to remember
who's not in there are two stealth lawyers on this cruise who are pretending not to be there for secret lawyer reasons.
Yeah.
And in the film, they combine them into one lawyer.
Yeah. Basically, people who have a financial interest in Lynette Ridgway's fortune. Who've been administering to that fortune in various ways. There's two lawyers on the boat. Who are that?
Yeah. Then there's Marie Van Schuyler and her younger cousin, Cornelia Robson. So I guess Marie Van Schuyler is very elderly, rich lady. American old lady.
It's not an Agatha Christie novel unless there's an annoying old rich lady.
Yeah, and then supported by her cousin who's sort of like going on the cruise with her. And then Miss Bowers, I guess, is her maid.
Her, like nurse/companion type thing.
In the book, this is a different character. This is not a rich old American lady. She's just... she's Lynette's godmother in the movie. And she's lesbians with the nurse.
Which is great. I love that change.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in the book, it's this horrible rich old woman, her poor cousin that she's just constantly bullying.
Yeah.
And this nurse that she's hired, ostensibly, like, for public appearances, it's like to look after her health. But actually, the nurse is there to stop her doing kleptomania.
Yeah.
There is a lot of petty theft in this book, and I enjoyed that immensely.
Yeah, I respect the kleptomania. I don't respect her being an absolute...
She's really horrible to her cousin.
Yeah.
And then there's Mr. Ferguson, who is the trust fund guy who, like, the American trust fund.
Oh, no, Pennington's the American one. The Ferguson's the British one.
Ferguson turns out to be a lord who's running around saying that he's a communist.
Wait, he's the communist.
Yeah, he's
a communist who has lots of torn clothes and pretends to be a man of the people, but has very nice underwear.
Yeah.
So he's clearly not willing to give up actual like wealth and like the comforts of wealth.
But
he talks a big game.
For most of the book, he's also really not very nice. But he's pretending to be like lower than his money status, I guess.
Yeah.
Then there's Signor Ricchetti, who is the Italian archaeologist.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's
or is he?
Louise Burgett, who is the Lynette's Doyle's maid.
Mm-hmm.
Also ends up dead.
Yeah. James Van Thorpe.
English lawyer.
The other lawyer.
English lawyer. So Lynette has like an English lawyer and also the American Trust Fund, and most of her trust is done in stocks, which is a plot relevant point later on.
And the English lawyers have figured out that the American lawyers are playing funny business with the money. And Lynette getting married has thrown a spanner into the funny business of the Americans, and that's their motive for wanting her dead. Because then the control would pass to the new husband, who's an idiot about money.
Yeah.
and could easily be fooled. And she's not.
She's not. Smart. She's quite clever. And then there's Carl Bessner, who is...
my beloved. He's
German physician.
Nice German doctor.
Nice German doctor guy. And then there's Fleetwood, who is one of the engineers on the Karnak, which is the cruise they're going on.
And like almost all these people have some connection to Lynette Ridgway and have motive for wanting her dead, except like the doctor.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I think one of
Poirot.
the... And Poirot, obviously, And I guess Poirot's psychic.
Yeah.
I think one thing I really wanted to talk about, though, was the character introductions in this book. It is a brilliantly, beautifully written chapter. Like, it has these links between these characters rather than just having... I guess it's over a period of like a couple of months, for want of a better word. So we start off with Poirot overhearing a discussion between Jacqueline and Simon at a restaurant. It's just coincidence they're there. And then the next point of view, I think, was Lynette and Jacqueline meeting at Lynette's house that she's inherited. And she's got a big country house.
She's bought it. She's bought it off somebody else whose family estate it was. And he lost all his money gambling, had to sell this house at what was like, she gave him more money than he probably should have, but it was still a very cheap price for what the house should have been, because he hadn't been maintaining it. And so therefore he has a motive to kill her, this guy she's bought the house off of, because she's gone and like done it up and torn
changed
buildings
it,
down.
There's a lot of beats in the character introduction of Lynette kind of steamrollering over people, and it's not necessarily that she's done anything wrong, but she's very much like, I want a thing. I'm going to make the thing happen. I'm going to get a thing.
Well, Poirot later quotes her the parable about the rich man with a big flock and the poor man who only has one little ewe lamb. And the rich man takes the poor man's ewe lamb. And it's like the only thing that he had in the world. And Poirot says, that's you. You keep doing that to people.
Yeah.
But you specifically have done that to Jacqueline by stealing her husband.
Yeah.
And so it's set up that, like, as we go through the character inductions with... all the different characters, how they are kind of, why they're going on this holiday on the cruise.
And how they're all connected.
How they are connected. Yeah, I thought it was a really great setup.
I enjoyed the kind of the sliding sort of... So you meet some of Lynette's friends. So you meet Jackie, who's relevant, and you meet, is it Joanna? Joanna something.
Joanna Southwood, who turns out to be relevant also. I was waiting for the whole book to figure out.
That was the link between that bit and her and Tim Allerton. And then Tim Allerton,
I was waiting the whole book to see how she was going to be relevant, because there was all this stuff about her in the beginning, and then she just isn't mentioned for like 3/4 of the book.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so brilliant about this book is the pieces that are dropped in the first, I guess, half of it. You reread it and you're going, oh my God, how did I miss this? Because it's obvious once Poirot works it out.
Yeah.
So they have the character introductions, they meet at a hotel, and I guess the main plot point at this point at the hotel is Jacqueline being absolutely bonkers.
Stalking the newlyweds.
It's just sort of she's stalking Simon and Lynette, and she's obviously been set up.
Who are on their honeymoon at this point.
Yeah, so they're on her honeymoon, she's stalking them. And she's going around saying, like, oh, I wish I could kill Lynette for stealing.
She's not saying it that publicly, but she's making it clear publicly that, like,
she's not
she
happy.
fucking hates Lynette.
Yeah.
And is not that happy with Simon anymore either, but still loves him.
Yeah.
Very possessively.
Yeah. And then we put all these volatile people on a boat together and don't let them leave.
And then just see what happens. And I thought, I was like, oh, okay, she's obviously the red herring. Like, duh, I've seen enough crime drama on TV. Like,
and to be fair, she does not kill Lynette.
No, she doesn't. So fast forward a bit, we're on the cruise. So firstly, there is an argument, for want of a better word, between...
A scene
between Jacqueline and Simon.
And that word is chosen carefully, right? And it's actually used in the book, like, oh, clearly Jackie is gearing up for a scene.
Yeah. Which has a double meaning when you come back to it.
Yeah, because it turns out that the whole thing has been staged, that Jackie and Simon have got this plot going to kill Lynette and get her money and then run off together. And it's all this, like, very elaborate, foreplanned, like, premeditated sort of charade to pin various bits of things on other people, and it's this very intricate setup.
Yeah, it's a very intricate setup, which also has a lot of coincidence with other factors.
Well, lots of people sort of...
There's lots of confusing sort of elements.
Everyone's got stuff going on,
Yeah.
And it intersects in really weird ways.
Yeah, like the whole, somebody saw so-and-so outside of their cabin throw something into the water. Well, somebody threw the gun in the water, but no, she was throwing her aunt's, like, alcohol stash into the, you know, we have multiple thieves on board, and it looks so her jewelry's missing after she's been murdered, and we have multiple thieves on board, so they could be the murderers, but maybe they aren't. And, like, the whole reason Colonel Race joins the ship is because, there's some guy, he's doing some like foreign office business, and
he's hunting an internationally wanted criminal.
Yeah, who they assume is on the boat.
And one thing I loved is there's this point where Race and Poirot they become crime-solving buddies, right? In the same way that he has crime-solving buddies in Orient Express.
Yeah,
and Race like writes down what he thinks is going on. It's this really nice like summary of here's what's happened up till now. If in case you, the reader, were confused, here is what's happened.
I loved that.
And the thing I wanted to call out about it was he writes a list of everybody on the boat who could possibly have had motive or not had motive to kill Lynette Ridgway. And the one person who is not on either of those lists is the one who did it.
Oh,
Simon is not on either of those two lists.
Yeah. Oh man, I didn't notice that.
He just wasn't even considered.
And the reason he's not considered is because at this scene, Jacqueline
shoots at him. She does not actually shoot him.
He pretends to have been shot.
You find out later that she hasn't shot him, but from at that point in the book, you think, oh, Jacqueline shot Simon. The gun's gone under the chair. There's a tussle, and then Jacqueline's like, "What have I done? I shot him. Oh my god, bear."
Yeah, and meanwhile he's clutching a handkerchief to his leg that's being slowly stained with red ink. Yeah, because he wants everyone to think that she's shot him. He grabs the gun, runs upstairs to kill Lynette, comes back, actually shoots himself in the leg. Yeah. And thereby establishes alibis for both him and Jacqueline.
And then when Lynette is found, her jewelry's missing.
Nobody notices that until like a day later, though.
Yeah, nobody notices that because I think it's the shock of Lynette dying and it's somebody on this boat and everyone's like, oh, who is it? And I really did love that Race summary because...
I skipped it apart from reading the lists.
Well, it was like one of those things with crime dramas, so sometimes I can't remember all the plot points, and it was like, oh, this is nice, thank you.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think Agatha Christie is very good at she's got a very tidy mind, you know, and I think you see that in Murder on the Orient Express, and you see that here.
It's a puzzle piece, and it's all the pieces that fit perfectly, you know?
Yeah. And you get that kind of like the introduction with the character introductions, like you were saying, Lottie. That's everything, almost everything you need to solve the murder is in those introductions. And then you get this nice tidy, like, hey, Poirot, we're going to set out on paper exactly what's going on and who's here and what their motives are and, you know, all of this. And I think that's I struggle to keep track of these moving pieces sometimes. So I always appreciate that bit of the
One
Agatha
thing I really
Christie.
like about this book as well is that, like, every time you have a detective novel of this kind, like, somebody lies. Everybody lies. Like, not to be Dr. House MD for you know, too much, but everybody is always lying about something. And sometimes in these kind of books, it feels a bit forced, or like you're like, why would somebody lie about that? But in this one, every character is completely internally consistent. In my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's so impressive to me. Like, you've got this perfectly interlocking like machinery of this mystery.
It works mechanically and psychologically, and to have a plot that complicated work mechanically and have the character set up done well enough that like there's no weak piece. Like, like from emotionally, you kind of go, that is some real, like, masterwork there.
And you do also have people who are just completely not related at all. Ferguson is just there.
He's just there. And I think...
he just happens to be there. It doesn't really factor in at all.
I think that's what's so good about this is it's not... I couldn't have guessed what would have happened, and so you were kept on your toes. So you had the pearls going missing. You think, okay, why would someone steal the pearls? Okay, somebody needs money. Oh, and then it comes back to Joanna Southwood, who was friends with Lynette, who was basically a criminal forger of jewels.
She and her cousin have this little business going, where they will forge people's jewelry and then alibi each other for the switch. And swap
it.
It's really funny and clever. And they're basically bored rich kids just doing it for shits and giggles.
It's fun jewel thief shenanigans.
And then there's another like layer onto that because you find out that
the imitation ones that they swapped them were also stolen by the kleptomaniac American. And it's like, she's not stealing it because she needs money. She has money. She just does it because she's a kleptomaniac.
She just steals stuff. And so you find out, you're thinking, that reveal of, the maid says, "Oh, Poirot, I know where the pearls are. My lady's stolen them because she's a kleptomaniac, and so what I have to do is basically take all the stuff that she's nicked during the day and put them back where she took them from." That is this woman, like this maid's sole job, which was comical and just funny. And then there was also the spicy writer, Mrs. Otterborn. She has this whole big speech about who she thinks done it. And it's said in a way that you're thinking, okay, because she's a writer, she's just saying that she thinks she knows.
And because she's been set up for the whole book as like being this very dramatic, ridiculous,
unserious,
and drunk most of the time. We find out that she's been drunk for basically this whole thing. And so, like, the definition of an unreliable narrator. So you don't really, I think, as a reader,
you're just like,
you
don't get on with it, all right.
Yeah, you don't think she knows anything, and it's only when she gets shot for it that you're like, oh, she did actually know something.
She did actually know something.
Yeah,
which is very cool.
How it all came about, like the plot of what actually happened. Compared to what you started with. So when you start, you think, oh, Lynette's stolen Simon, Jacqueline's a bit off a rocker. You've got all this like paraphernalia of other people who are sort of part of this story. And then
also have their own dramas.
Yeah, they've got their own dramas going on, but they want to go on holiday. And then there's like a layer of money on top of it. And then at the end, what actually happened was, like you say, there was a lot of interconnecting parts, a lot of, like you said, like Agatha Christie's mind is so clear and so precise. So you've got the first layer of Simon and Jacqueline basically plotted to steal Lynette's money by Simon marrying her, and then they kill Lynette and they get the money. So from there, they're just committing a base level crime.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I think the motivation of that is really interesting, and it was something that I was super pissed off at the film, actually, because I think
like Jacqueline does not care for money at all. Is the interesting thing.
And it's very much like, so Jacqueline plans the thing because the first thing Poirot thinks about them when he overhears that conversation in the restaurant is she loves him more than he loves her.
Yes.
And so you end up in the situation where, Lynette's given him a job and she's become immediately fixated on him. And he's like not bothered, but he's like kind of like, oh, if I had her money, I'd be set for life. Oh, wouldn't it be funny if I married her and then killed her? And like, Jacqueline's like, he's such an idiot. I caught him like reading books about arsenic. I knew he was going to do it. And I knew he was going to fail and get arrested. And so the only thing I could do, as somebody who loved him, was to plot the murder for him so he wouldn't get caught. And I don't know. I was like, and as I'm saying it, it sounds really sensationalist, but the way it's done in the novel, you kind of go,
yeah, that tracks.
I mean, obviously, cool motive, still murder, but like, it's interesting. It does. It hangs together psychologically in a really interesting way. I vibe with it.
It fits with her character as well. Her entire experience through this whole thing, from the start, like when she's in the restaurant with Simon, you think, oh my God, like you say, she loves him more than he loves her. And he hasn't really got prospects, and then he's gone and met Lynette, and she was worried about him meeting Lynette because Lynette's got everything and she's got the money, and he'll leave her.
Oh, she wasn't actually worried about him because, like, she was like, I know Simon is not interested, but what she was worried about was that he was going to do this, he was going to go through with this plan and get himself caught.
Yeah,
but like her perspective on it, as I say, it's like this. It's very ruthless, like that definition of ruthlessness, where it's like you see the thing you want and you see the clear, golden, shining path to get to it, and nothing else matters. And that's what I think Jacqueline is like in this book.
Yeah. And I thought it was an interesting. So you had some interesting stuff about Simon's personality as well, because I feel like until we know that he did it, all you really get of him is this kind of sort of himbo-ish, useless rich guy. He's kind of pretty. He's kind of,
he's not really rich though, is he?
New money.
No, he's a younger son of a good family who doesn't have any money, I think is how that's
or like
set
the
up.
family's fallen from grace or something.
Yeah. So he's somebody who's used to having money, and they like
the pedigree,
still used
but not
to
the
being
wealth.
respectable. But yeah, I mean, like, there's still the way he acts is a very kind of like upper class idiot.
He's got the entitlement
sort of thing going on. You think, oh, he's kind of harmless. He seems pretty harmless, apart from the like, you know, having jilted Jackie. Almost. Yeah, and the way she talks about him later, the kind of, I think there's a few beats earlier of sort of like, you get the sense of him maybe being not entirely happy with his marriage to Lynette, maybe. But the way she puts it, he couldn't stand how she ordered him about. Like he's of the idea that a wife obeys a husband, not the other way round, kind of thing. And
he has this whole speech about ownership.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to me how that's something that's like hidden for that whole book, but it tracks. It tracks for what else have we know about him. And I thought that was just a really interesting twist on the kind of like, because the reason you don't think he did it, aside from the very cleverly plotted alibi, is because he seems kind of harmless.
Well, the thing that comes out at the end is, like Jacqueline says about him, he wants all the things that money can get you. Like a child, he just wants them. And I think there is something there with like him coming from this old money family, but him not actually having the things that he feels entitled to because of it.
Yes, it's the entitlement, isn't it? And it's a very stupid level of entitlement, and it wouldn't have gotten him very far if Jackie hadn't been so prepared to
do a murder for him.
Kill and die for him. Yeah.
Oh, it ends with her committing murder-suicide, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a very interesting dynamic.
And it's quite interesting as well when Lynette is going through the business papers with her American trustee or trust owner. And Simon's like, oh, well, why don't you let all the clever people just get on with it and do it? She's like, no, I'm going to look through every single damn thing. And part of me's going like, you're going, Lynette, why did you marry this guy? He's an arsehole. And he just doesn't respect the fact that, she has her money and she is smart enough to understand her own money. And that was the plot that the Americans who had basically messed up something on the stocks with Lynette's money.
They had made some very risky investments.
Or some of it, at least.
And they were going to be able to make it back by June when she was going to turn 21 and they would have to have had everything in order. Yeah. And she that up for them by getting married beforehand, which also triggers her accessing it as a sort of full adult.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, she's going to discover that we've been playing fast and loose with
and
her
the English lawyer has sent his son undercover.
I think it's his nephew.
To sort of keep an eye on Lynette because he thinks something funky's going on with the American trustee people.
But can't prove that the Americans have been doing all this funny business.
Yeah.
I think we have done a lot of exposition vis-a-vis what the plot of this book actually is. Yeah. And I had some like questions about like, just the like, I mean, like, had you guys read this before? Is this your first experience of the book?
I had not read it before.
I think I'd read it for like book club in year 8. I don't think I quite understood the perfection of Agatha Christie's writing when I was 13, but I did enjoy the book.
It's so complicated.
Well, so you're not quite the right age to, like, look at Poirot and go, that's my perfect little boy, that's my specialist little man.
Yeah, like, he's a weird little dude. Can we talk about how much everybody's just like, who's this weird little man? Who's this weird little man who's collecting unsettling young women who say feral things about murder on the regular? Like, these are the two things that I enjoyed most about this book. Is firstly, the way Poirot is presented as he's just some weird little guy. He's living his fruitiest Benoit Blanc life on this river cruise, and I love it for him. And secondly, he is just collecting unsettling young women. He's like, hey, this Rosalie Otterbourne, woman keeps talking about how she'd like to tear Lynette limb from limb. I love this. Magnificent. She's my new best friend. And, trying to, sort of reason with Jackie and being sympathetic to Jackie and...
Oh, you know something delightful that I've just realised? He's compared to a cat throughout a lot of this book.
Yes.
As cat-like. And so he sees Rosalie Otterbourne, and she, by everybody just describes her as, she looks really fucking sad. She looks weary, she looks bitter, she does not look like a happy person. And he does the thing of, wow, you're sad. You know what will make this better? Me!
Yeah.
And he befriends her.
That is cat behaviour.
Exactly.
I will find the prickliest arsehole who's least likely to want to be my friend also and just sit on their lap until they love me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's basically what he does with her.
Yeah. And I love that for him. It's very much like Poirot just makes a lot of friends in this book. And I like that. Yeah. I enjoyed that.
Well, he becomes a safe person for her to talk about her mother's alcoholism too, because he figures it out. She has somebody to talk about it to that she didn't have to tell and like break her mother's confidence.
And I think that's another thing that really struck me is how like compassionate Poirot is in this book. How much because like we were saying earlier, there's so many moving parts, and all of them, everybody has something else going on in their life that means that it's natural and understandable for them to obfuscate or to lie or to be places they shouldn't.
The empathy that he needs empathy to solve this mystery, and he has it, and like able to put himself in the shoes of every other person on the boat.
And it's very like, I don't know, I feel like it's just a really interesting, because he's so non-judgmental and that's kind of what allows all of these people to talk to him and to trust him. And I very much enjoyed the complete lack of, he discovers that Tim Allerton and Joanna South whatever are doing crimes, and they're doing jewelry crimes, and he's like, don't care about jewelry crimes. Like, maybe stop doing that, but like, I'm not going to do anything about it.
Like, you get the impression throughout this book that he just really likes people. And he's interested in people and all the weird ways that they are, and how kind he is to Jacqueline. Because like throughout this book, like she's clearly miserable. She's clearly setting herself on a path to do something terrible. Poirot doesn't know that it's long been premeditated with Simon. Yeah. But throughout the first 2/3 of this book, he's constantly going to Jacqueline and being like, "You can stop. You can turn away. This is hurting you, and it will end badly." And it's interesting how close it seems like he actually came to succeeding.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was an interesting. Yeah, and I thought it was an interesting. Another parallel to Murder on the Orient Express, which we should talk about, because I feel like there's a lot of parallels. It's really interesting.
There are quite a few parallels, yes.
But the specifically in both, somebody maybe not that likable tries to hire him to protect them or to prevent somebody to protect them, to find out who's threatening them, or to stop somebody from threatening them.
Lots of people with a motive to kill this person.
Yeah, and in both cases he refuses. And in Murder on the Orient Express, it's because he says, it's because I don't like your face. And that's valid. Yeah. That's very valid of him.
The vibes were rancid.
Yeah, and in this case, he's like, well, listen, you guys are technically in the wrong here. Like, you've done something. The reason you're so upset about this is because you feel guilty. And she hasn't done anything wrong. So, no, you can't hire me. Sorry. Bye-bye. Yeah. And then he immediately goes to Jacqueline and is like, look, they didn't hire me. I wouldn't take their money. But you seem really sad, and I don't think what you're doing is going to make you happier. Can you... And that was just a really interesting... Yeah,
it's so
I liked
compassionate and empathetic, you know? And this is why he's my favourite little guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is another thing I want to talk about, is the Murder on the Orient Express parallels. Because, okay, you've got a lot of people stuck in a locked room mystery that is also in motion, which I vibe with. It's a fun setup. You've got the whole everybody turns out to be more connected than you think they were originally. We've got our convenient little list of, who was where and what are their motives. And I like his sidekick. I love that he has a friend, once again, has a friendly sidekick, who's just a bro that somebody he already knows from somewhere, that he's like, hey, let me tell you my thoughts.
And I think Race has already been involved in a murder with Poirot or something. No, it's the proprietor of the restaurant also. That's why in the first scene when Poirot's going to this restaurant, he first sees Jacqueline and Simon together. He gets a good table and gets all the good food, is because he solved a murder for the guy once.
I do enjoy that. I enjoy the repeated use of the D&D tactic of I know a guy.
Yeah.
There's lots of people that Poirot can end up relying on just all over the world because, he has solved a murder for them at some point. Yeah, and presumably has been continued to show this kind of level of understanding and compassion about it the whole time.
It's kind of like he's sort of collecting buddies as you go through the world.
One of the things that broke my heart about the movie was that in the first movie you have Book, who is the manager of the Orient Express, right?
Yeah.
And in the movie of Death on the Nile, Book takes the place of Tim Allerton, the one who's the cousin of Joanna Southwood, who they're doing the jewel thievery, and Book is the one who dies instead of Salome Otterborn for almost revealing who it was. And it was like they'd brought back this charming, lovely guy who was just a sweetheart that Poirot had befriended, just to kill him. And I was so mad. And then when I read the book and I realised that was not what was going to happen, I was like, yes, good. My boy will live, even though it's a completely different boy in the book anyway.
No, it's a completely different boy. But Yeah, no, it's Poirot and Poirot's friends. Also, the fact that he does just find in Murder on the Orient Express, as in Death on the Nile, he is just like, I will find a young woman who's vaguely unsettling, and I will become her best friend. Like, he does that on the train. That's a very Benoit Blanc mood of him, actually. Yes. But yeah, that was a thing I wanted to talk about, actually, was I really like the character work in this book. And I think it's really interesting, like, different levels of it, because, like, all of the women are so well drawn. Like, they're really interesting. They're three-dimensional. I think Mrs. Allerton is probably the only, like,
just, like, unambiguously likable,
yes,
like, pleasant.
That is the phrase I'm looking for, yeah.
She's just fun.
Like, I think the closest we get to, like, her being a bit unpleasant is the, like, she doesn't trust Joanna Southwood. Which, like, honestly, is kind of fair, because she is doing crimes.
I mean, the only scene we see Joanna Southwood in person, she's just awful. She's just like, yeah, I'm completely mercenary. If you lost all your money, Lynette, I would drop you in a heartbeat.
At least she's honest. I tell you what, but this is the thing, though. It's like, it's a range, you know? There's that I feel like there's a couple of people in here who I think are caricatures. And I think that's very interesting to hold up against the other characters, where you go, there's like, the characters are either, they're bland, they're caricatures, or they're these really interesting, like, three-dimensional, sympathetically portrayed people that, I don't know, it's interesting. I like it, but yeah.
Standout character for me as well, unexpectedly, was Cornelia, the bullied cousin.
Oh, yeah. Well, she turns out to have, like, hidden depths as well.
Who starts off being, like, this downtrodden, like, this is kind of pathetic that her rich cousin, she's a poor relation of this rich cousin of hers, this awful old American woman, and Cornelia's, like, been brought along as basically, like, a pet on this trip.
Yeah.
For Marie von Schuyler to, like, bully and order around. And she's still so happy to be there, and you're like, oh my God, grow a spine. And then she does, but in a way that doesn't compromise her kindness.
Yeah.
And I love that her whole, like, journey in this book. So sweet.
Yeah, no, she does such a good job. And it's like, it's really interesting because, like, she does start out and you think, oh, she's sort of, she's kind of very kind, very friendly, very spineless, doesn't know that much. And then the further you get through it, you know, she's striking up friendships with, like, Dr. Bessner, and she's really interested in the tombs, and she's, like, very kindly listening to Jackie when Jackie's trying to cause this scene. You know, just very helpful. And and then you get further through it, and the horrible communist, the fake communist lord guy is like, hey, you're weird. Will you marry me? And she's like...
And she goes, no, actually, I don't think I will. I don't like you very much.
Yeah, and you don't seem very reliable.
I love that bit. That
was fucking great, yeah.
And then she marries a nice doctor.
He was just like, but why wouldn't you marry me? I'm amazing. And I'm like, because you're an asshole. Like, obviously.
It's like he goes, oh, you're very interesting, or you have opinions. And then one of the opinions is, I don't like you. And suddenly he doesn't like that she has opinions.
It's so funny that he's like, what about me isn't reliable? Like, you're literally lying to everybody about the fact that you're a lord. And you keep saying really obnoxious shit about how it doesn't matter that Lynette's dead because she was a useless drain on society, and there's women like that all over the world and they should all be dead, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, like the 3 women who die in this, he's horrible about all of them.
Yeah. Also, I love that there's repeated emphasis on how dirty his trousers are. Agatha Christie's like, you can tell he's a wrong-un because he hasn't laundered his clothes.
Well, more pointedly, because it's what's the word that I'm looking for? It's a pretense, it's a farce. He's doing it for appearances. It's superficial.
Yeah,
because he wears the nice underwear that's very cleanly laundered. Like he has really high quality things where nobody can see them.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because it's kind of, I feel like when I picked it up, I was sort of like, oh, this is like Jeeves and Wooster level idiot communist. You know how in like the communists in Jeeves and Wooster are very like, they're unwashed, they have terrible facial hair, no manners. All of
Bingo
this.
becomes a communist.
Yeah. And like that's a very like, I think, not uncommon way of portraying them. I think that you see that in the Lord Peter Wimseys as well. There's this like stereotype of what the communists were like at that time. And I remember thinking,
this guy in the book is buying into that by pretending to be like that.
Yeah. And
so to sell the idea that he's a communist.
And it was funny to me that because I was reading it, I was thinking about the like contrasting character work again. You read it and you kind of go, oh, this guy doesn't really fit. You know, because everybody else, or most everybody else, apart from maybe Salome Otterborn, Salome Otterborn, pronunciation, what is it even? Are like, very, as we've said, very three-dimensional, very interesting. They're not cardboard cutouts, you know, they feel like real people. And they're very, you know, flawed and interesting in that way. And this guy feels very, it's like you've put a cartoon in a live action. You're sort of like,
yes,
this feels wrong. This feels weird.
Yeah.
And then it is because he's putting it on, essentially. Or not, maybe he might genuinely believe it. But
he's not got the, what's the word I'm looking for? Integrity or authenticity? Because he's lying to himself about, like, by not acknowledging who he is. And coming at it from a place of like he's pretending to be someone other than who he is because he can't reconcile the two parts of this identity that he has.
And it's also, I mean, thinking about like modern leftism, but it's a really interesting thing because I feel like he's very much that kind of like the guy on the internet who's like, no, genuinely, I think we should kill rich people. It's not a joke. It's like they really do think that the best way to like get fairness and equality for everybody is just an orgy of violence. And you're sort of going, that's not how anything ought to work. And the fact that seems to be why you're here is because you think you're going to get to do morally good violence is
it reminds me of the
telling.
people who are like that saying about like when people are brutally honest, actually what they're really interested in is brutality, not the honesty.
What was he in the adaptation?
Oh, so that's really interesting because
they gave the communism to somebody else.
Because you've made a point here for like everything wrong with the adaptation. I haven't seen it.
Actually, it's really interesting. This is a bit of a change that they made in the adaptation that I actually liked. Because they combined the communist and Miss Van Skylar.
Okay.
And they basically made her not awful.
Yeah, they were like, she's actually given all her money away.
And they make her the godmother of Lynette.
Like, she's a socialist and she's an outspoken socialist.
Communist, specifically.
But she's not a caricature of one. She's put her money where her mouth is, basically. And she's not constantly advocating for the guillotine and saying that it's okay that like a bunch of useless women have been murdered and all of this. And yes,
I also really like, so it's pointed out in the film that like there's this contradiction that she is a communist and is always going on about like I won't profit off the down being like the oppression of the working classes, but she retains a maid, the nurse, and then you have the twist later in the movie that that's what they are to the world, but actually. They're a couple, and obviously they can't be public about this because it's the 30s.
It's a bit that they're doing to make sure that nobody goes, oh my gosh, they're lesbianing. Yeah, so they're thinking about problems I had with the film. I will say, first of all, that this is the moment where I understood what people meant when they say, sometimes a film can be good and it can achieve what it's set out to do and do it well and effectively, and yet be something that you hate because it's saying something that you disagree with.
Yeah, the thesis statement of the film is love makes you stupid and worse.
Yeah, pretty much.
In every way.
It makes
you act inconsistently with your values, and it makes you unhappy.
Yeah, and it makes the motive very shallow.
You don't get any of that interesting, like, they make each other worse bit of Simon and Jacqueline.
Yeah.
You lose a lot of characterization from them.
Yeah.
In the movie.
And that's very disappointing. It's so horny. They made the film so horny. And it's like,
so bad.
It's excruciating.
Apparently Poirot has a love interest. I'm like, why the fuck was that
gosh, really? No, it's more focused on his old dead love interest.
Oh, okay.
Him reminiscing about love and is it something that's worth pursuing and is he happy without it and so on and so forth.
And it's very like, so they've done him dirty as well. And I think that they've tried to argue that because of his trauma, his lost dead fiance, that he's cold and superior and closed off and doesn't know what love is, right? And you know we've seen this with Sherlock adaptations. You know, it's like you're a terrible person to whom it's more important to be right than to be compassionate. Now, if you've been listening to the rest of this podcast, you will know that we fundamentally disagree with this take on Poirot
and Sherlock Holmes as well.
And Sherlock Holmes. Yes, this is true. And it's very like, I don't know, it bugs me that it's sort of, it's twofold, the bugging. The first thing is that, he's a very compassionate person in the book.
He's so warm and loves people so much. He's
so much fun. He's having such a good time, like, being a person who is into people, you know? So that bugs me.
One of the reasons that I like, again, like, transmask icon Poirot is because I think he has some of the same joy at getting to be who he is.
It's the Gomez Adams energy. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
He's got trans boy swag. It's true. But and the second thing was that, like, the thesis statement of the film is that only by opening himself up to romantic love can he become a real boy who experiences emotions and isn't to everybody. And I hate that. I hate it
That's
so much.
A great
conflating romantic love with personhood is just so offensive on so many levels.
Yeah. And also even the film is itself, he's trying to make the statement in some ways that Poirot is cold and unfeeling in some way. Like, it's also denying it at every turn. Like,
but he's not cold and unfeeling in the book. That's the daft thing. It's like, he's a very personable, I think,
like in a weird, offbeat kind of way.
In a
like,
weird
there's people,
way, but
I
like,
enjoyed people being like, "Why is he wearing that? What the fuck?" I appreciated that detail.
It's kind of he's talking to Jacqueline and Lynette and listening to their, like, if you heard three things come out of Jacqueline's mouth as a real person, you'd be like, I'm going to waddle backwards the F off. Like, it just
I'm leaving right now. This is too much. And he's like, no, I'm going to be gently here and be like, sort of, just not put off. He's not put off by intensity in random women, which I appreciate. Also, my last movie point I will say is I do think it's kind of funny how the film was like, the whole point of this movie is sex and death. Everything is about sex and death.
Yeah.
And the one character in the book that professes that worldview is Salome Otterborn, who in the book is the silliest, most incomprehensible, one of the characters for which the narrative has the least sympathy, because she keeps pushing.
Movie Salome Otterborn is completely different.
Oh, yeah, no, in the book. And it's funny to me that the character that I think is the most caricature-like in the book, the least sympathetic, and one of the things that we are supposed to think she's silly for is trying to make everything about sex and death. And the movie looked at that
and does that.
That kind of reminds me of the Hunger Games movies completely misunderstanding the thesis statement of the books.
Yeah.
And sort of reinforcing the opposite of it. Yeah.
Guys, talking about movie adaptations, who is the only human in the Muppets adaptation of this book?
I don't know. I actually...
Colonel Race?
I think it needs to be Poirot.
No, because I feel like Poirot and Race, hear me out here, they are Gonzo and Rizzo for this. Because they are outside the narrative. They're the ones that are telling the story, who are trying to work out for us what actually happened. And they're I mean, I'm going to call them a dynamic duo, but let's face it, Poirot has all the dynamism and Race is just kind of there. But, like...
I think it's because I love her so much, but I want to say Rosalie Otterborn.
Yeah, I think that's fun. I want the unsettling woman of this book to be the, like, front and centre on the... I vibe with that. Also, it makes the Ted Allerton being just like, oh, hi, by the way, I'm madly in love with you thing a lot funnier if he's a Muppet.
Yeah, that actually would be great. What do we think Benoit Blanc would do?
See, the thing is, I feel like I don't think he'd do anything different.
I think the idea of what actually happened would occur to him sooner because he's more insane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah. Okay, so we think he'd get it earlier.
Yeah. I also don't think, I wouldn't change that much. He's a weird little dude. He's just some fruity little guy who's like, hey, I'm going to solve a murder in an enclosed, a set place, like either a country house or a boat or a train or a horrible, a Greek island owned by a horrible billionaire. Like, the premise is very Knives Out. The construction is very Benoit Blanc in terms of we've got a lot of complicated moving parts, but everything you need to solve it has been introduced in the first half of the film.
And also witnessing ongoing events.
Yes.
Like, he is actually, particularly in Glass Onion, he's there witnessing things as they unfold, which is what Poirot's doing in this one. Yeah,
definitely. Also, him being like, I am going to find a young woman who's been wronged and be like, we're best bros now and we're going to solve a murder.
To be fair, I don't know that Rosalie has been, wronged per se. She's just had a really rough go of things.
She's been dealt a hand.
Yeah, she hasn't been done dirty by anything other than circumstance, really.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, I think you could kind of argue that for Marta and Knives Out as well, maybe. But,
yes.
But, yeah, no, I feel like Benoit Blanc in this situation it's not that different from what Poirot would do. What I do think would be kind of interesting is if Jeeves and Wooster were on this boat, how would Jeeves fix this? Because I feel like Jeeves would fix this. If this was a Jeeves and Wooster book, Jeeves would fix it before any murders happened. And I'm kind of curious as to how you guys think he would make that work.
I think he would be there at the scene that Jackie and Simon make. And rush to Simon's aid, discover that he hadn't been shot, and not have told anyone, and like that's how I think how the divergence would start.
Yeah.
And Simon would know that he knew.
Yeah, in my head I had a base thing. He's just taking all the guns.
I think also he would have like taken the pearls back and like put them back where he found them.
Oh yeah, he's like unraveled the thing. I think that's the thing. I think the way Jeeves solves it is less about the like him actively going out to be a detective. And the thing is, all of the red herrings, all of the like the double theft, the archaeologist who turns out to be a violent agitator.
I think he just quietly and almost accidentally unravels all these things. Yeah.
I think they're all resolved without like them having to come to like Poirot's attention, because Jeeves is just that good at his job. Yeah. That is just like, this just never happens. And then so you're left with just the unvarnished, there's a scene in the bar and then it turns out that Lynette's been murdered thing. You're just left with that.
I would like it if he could somehow stop there being Lynette's murder at all. Because I don't like her particularly much, but she shouldn't have to die.
Yeah, she's definitely not one of those. Oh god, it's so funny. So I bought my sister Sparkling Cyanide which is an Agatha Christie, for Christmas, I think, because she's been getting into like murder mystery stuff recently. And I remember really enjoying it as a kid or a young teen. I remember being like really into this book, and she's been live texting me the whole time like, this bitch deserved it. I don't even care who murdered her. She's terrible. Like this. And I think sometimes in an Agatha Christie, it do be like that. I mean, Murder on the Orient Express, you're very much like, I don't care that this guy's dead. I'm actually kind of thrilled about it. And in this one,
and that's why Poirot ends up too. He's just like, fair play.
Yeah. And I think Lynette is one of those kind of like, okay, I'm not massively sad about you being dead, but also being like a rich woman who likes to get her own way and doesn't think about other people very much is not a good reason to be dead. It's not a good reason to be dead. Yeah, like half the people with quote-unquote motive to kill her on the boat is actually an inherited motive. It's not about her, it's about what her dad did or, Well, it's about money in a very sort of heartless
like, she might have grown up into a much nicer person, because she's 20 at this point in the book. At the time she dies. Which is another thing about the movie, is that they age up the characters. Like, Gal Gadot is incredible, but she does not pass the 20. And so the Lynette in the film is... It comes across kind of a bit more egregious that she'd be acting so childishly.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And in a way she doesn't, which makes her much more likeable. I mean, in the film, Poirot actually agrees to look out for her, and he refuses in the book. But that's because she's actually a much more sympathetic character in the movie.
Yeah.
Who is the mansplain manipulate male wife of this book?
Ferguson is Mansplain, the fake communist.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
Tim Allerton is male wife.
Oh, interesting. I was going to say Dr. Bessner, but I think that's not actually it's not really their dynamic.
There's this bit where Poirot and Race both go, like, after they find out that this jewellery thief thing has been happening. Yeah. And they go, well, he's obviously going to drop this because Rosalie was not going to have any of it. He's obviously going to have to give up this life of crime because his soon-to-be wife wouldn't like it. So that's why I think he's male wife. And then...
Yeah.
Manipulate is Jackie, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I think that's... Because, like, the thing is, like, you get the impression that Simon on his own couldn't manipulate his way out of a paper bag. He's manslaughter. If we're adding another M to this, he's manslaughter.
Like, there's not enough going on in his head to actually do a premeditated murder. It would always be manslaughter because he's basically just not in control of his own self.
Guys, what do we think our darling dear Gothmog would rate this book out of 10? Gothmog being our cat, if you're new to listening, like, who the heck is Gothmog?
Gothmog is the baby.
Hey, we're 4 episodes into this season now. They ought to know.
Yes, but there might be new listeners, for this episode.
If you don't know who Gothmog is, follow me on Twitter, and from there, follow me on Mastodon, and then you'll get pictures of Gothmog.
Yeah, also on the Instagram as well.
I think she would rate this highly, because there's murder. There's not actual cats, but Hercule Poirot is described as being cat-like at various points, and
people are stabbed in the back.
Obviously the best. People are stabbed. Actually, are they? They get their throats cut. Oh no, she gets stabbed in the heart, doesn't she?
In the film she gets her throat cut, I think. And
in this she's stabbed in the heart.
Stabbing, yeah. There's shenanigans. There's be gay do crime of a jewelry theft situation.
Yes, there's gay, sort of mostly harmless crime, which is the jewel thieving. I think I'd go for a 9, honestly.
Yeah. No, I'm down with that. Also, sorry, you will get inflicted with my terrible fan fiction thought, which is I was kind of going, one of my possible terrible summaries for this book was Poirot just going, let's go lesbians, let's go lesbians, let's go lesbians.
I will say, I'll give another point in the cat liking this. Somebody knocked a boulder off a cliff at once, and that's like backing something on the table.
They did knock a boulder off a cliff to try and murder Lynette, so...
But yeah, I sort of want Rosalie Otterbourne, Joanna Southwood. Why can't I remember her fucking surname? But yeah, I do kind of like the idea that she's just like, what if we just kept doing jewel thieves actually? And I had an amoral bitch of a girlfriend who only cares about money. I feel like that. Do you know what? I could vibe with that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna write it.
If it does exist,
don't let me do this to myself.
If someone does know that this fanfic exists, email us teachmycattoread@gmail.com. I always say that when you come up with a fanfic idea, and someday we're gonna get an email like in 10 years' time, and someone will be like, "Oh, I heard your thing, then I found the fanfic." But anyway,
It's actually a secret. This is how you guess my AO3 handle, is by you follow the trail of all the terrible fic ideas I've had live on this podcast and be like, aha, it's this bitch over here.
What else have you guys been reading or listening to, watching outside of reading Death on the Nile for the podcast? Or has it just been Death on the Nile?
It's just been Death on the Nile. I've been procrastinating.
Yeah. I have started listening to Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring on audiobook.
Read so exciting!
Andy
Serkis.
My gosh! And I'm finding
it to the list, then,
so much easier an audiobook because I'm just like it's a very very slow paced book. Like I'm 2 hours in, they haven't left the shot yet.
Just that you're experiencing the Tom Hardy effect of they walk.
But what I love, the amount of audiobooks I've listened to now, and normally if there is a narrator who is British or has like a more specifically like a typically like English RP accent for the main characters, anyone who is a farmer is West Country.
Oh yeah. There's no farmers anywhere else in the UK, don't you know that? You know?
Yeah, there's literally no farms in the north.
If someone's like, what's a West Country accent? If you've watched Hot Fuzz, that is I feel that in my head is like what's the line when he goes oh yeah, everyone's packing up guns around here. Who? Farmers. Who else? Farmers' mums. Like those two Andys, that is the voice in these audiobooks. So it just makes me very happy that they're all got very it has like these local English and also wider like Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish and also Irish accents. So yeah, it's quite fun. It's a lot. It's a good time. But yes, we can add it for series 4.
Guys, the quilt is descending on my head. The quilt has nearly on the mic. It's like some slow murder thing is happening here. I'm going to be absorbed by the fabric.
I'm very, very excited about what we're reading next time. We got to mention it.
Yeah, we got to mention it.
It's Guards.
Yeah, Guards.
So
be excited.
Exciting.
Be
oh my god!
Our next Pratchett episode, Guards. You can.
Yes.
We will definitely be asking the question: what would Vimes have done if he'd been stuck on a riverboat with a bunch of rich people and having to solve a murder? Because that would be hilarious.
Yeah, so we will be doing that next time. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Remember to follow us on your podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please give us a like or review if you enjoyed listening. And you can connect with us on our socials or email us teachmycattoread@gmail.com. It's all linked in the description below. Also, you'll find on our website like our review policy and the books we've chosen for series 3, etc., etc. So you just find all of that on the website. So say hello, send us a message and recommend us some books to read. Big virtual hugs, and we will see you next time. Bye!